All right, Melvin, Skip, how's it going?
What's going on, my man?
Nothing much, man.
All is well.
Yeah, man, glad to have you back, Melvin. Third time
Yes, sir.
seeing you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem, man. Definitely, man. Skip, this is our first time.
Yes, sir.
We'll get to know you a little bit better, for people who might not know, get to, your story growing up and everything, and introduce you to everybody,
Yes, sir.
a little more.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. No problem. Well, you guys work together.
Yes, we've been working together since 2005 when Chip came in with Second Call, an intervention and prevention program, and he's been having his boots to the ground not only since 2005, but before then. He's been through the wars. He's spent his time on the pavement. And so many times we hear like guys like Sawston White and other ones that abuse the internet to where we don't hear the other side of people's voices that doesn't be heard. So I thought it would be greatly appreciated that we bring attention to those that does the work when the camera not around. So this is just one of many guests to where we can show us out here on the West Coast, we make it happen. And that's what's going on right now. So I brought Skip up because his ears is to the ground. He knows what's going on. He deals with senseless gun violence, crime, intervention and prevention, mentorship, and things of this nature, and opportunities for these youth, elders, and adults as well. So I think this is a great opportunity to put a different light and from a different point of view as opposed to what's going on the internet today.
All right, well, that's what's up. That's what's up. Well, let's get to know you a little bit better, Skip. Where'd you grow up at?
Man, I grew up all through South LA. Originally born, went to 1221 East 20th Street. That's where my mother grew up, between San Pedro and Alameda, that area right there. So no matter where we moved to Compton, we moved to 66 and Denker, moved on 63rd and Crenshaw. Growing up throughout the city, I had to get out of there and move with my grandmother on Washington and Hobart. So that's where I call home, the West Adams, Washington, Arlington area.
And what was it like for you growing up there?
Well, growing up there was cool. I mean, it was a family, I mean, all the other places my mother went, that's where all the challenges and obstacles were, going to Catholic school, growing up in South LA, around the corner from 2 blocks away from Monster Cody, on the other side, going to school through the 60s. That was the challenge. Moving to Washington and Hobart, that area, that was cool. It was all right.
Whereabouts is Washington and?
That's the West Adams area. It's Sugar Hill. It's Washington, Arlington areas. We call it the West Adams area.
Okay.
Just north of USC. So it's right there, both sides of the 10 freeway. People know Johnny's Pastrami, Adams and Crenshaw. A lot of people are familiar with that area right there, but that's the same area.
Okay. And what age were you when you were?
I moved over there about 16, 17 years old.
Okay.
But I had already did a tour of all of Los Angeles. Like I say, my mother moved to Compton. My grandmother lived in Inglewood for a minute. So I had been all through LA, by the time I moved over there.
Okay, so you grow up, you get this main part, West Adams. And what are some challenges and things that you're going through in the streets?
I got jumped by the rolling 60s, living on 63rd and Crenshaw. I've been shot at several times.
Well, what year was this?
I got jumped in 79.
Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. I went unconscious. That was about 15, 20. It was a whole bunch of people. I can't say how many, but there was a whole bunch. And, I went unconscious. I came to, running down the street. I'm bleeding, all that. So my mother figured I was going to be dead if I stayed, over there. So we had to come up with an alternative. And my alternative was I was out doing bad things. I ended up going to jail. But when I came home, I had to.
How many people do you think jumped you?
I'm thinking about 15 or more, but it was
15
it was anywhere from 30 to 60 dudes on the street that day.
And you were by yourself?
I was by myself. Red jacket on, walking
Red jacket
down Crenshaw. As soon as I passed 58, I saw them. But before I can get to 59th, they was on me.
Were they walking too?
Yeah, they were walking, coming from a party. I found out later what had happened. They came from a big party and they was pumped up. So,
Man, so you come to, do you go to the doctors, the hospital?
nah, I ran home. I ran home and was bamming on the door, and my mother was asleep. She heard me bamming on the door. She seen my face. My brother walked outside to see if he could see anybody. My mother came out, and I was like, my brother was talking to somebody. I'm like, there you go, right here. He's one of them, right? And dude was like, nah, not me. My mother got the pistol and started trying to get at them for getting at me. My face was horrible. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
So, you know, my brother didn't get out as a gangster, but my mother did. She came out the house like, oh, y'all gonna pay for this.
Were you involved in the streets at the time, or were you just like...
You know what? So in 1977, I was still a kid. I mean, I was probably 15 at the time, but when I was 13, I pledged allegiance to I wasn't gonna be a victim of the Crips. You know, so I don't want to say I was a blood because I was, but pretty much I was. I made a decision at the age of 13, man, I'm fighting the Crips. They want my money, they want to know where I'm going, this and that, I'm gonna fight them. So, but I just didn't have that affiliation. I was in Inglewood and I didn't have that real affiliation with the Inglewood families. I didn't have that affiliation with the East Side 20s where I really came up at. So even though I consider myself a blood, I wasn't tapped into certain groups in Inglewood or certain groups on the East Side 20s. So, or even in the jungles. I went to school in the jungles. So it was just like, you know, I'm a blood just by default because I'm gonna fight the Crips. I don't want to be the victim.
Okay, I see. And now that you've been jumped, I mean, does this change how you move or how you go around or anything?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. It also changed my mentality on, you know, the old saying, if somebody hits you, hit them back. Hit them first now. I'm not, you know, at this point, it changed to who I became mentally as well as, you know, as well as my critical thinking skills. You know, it just got better being on the streets. I realized I'll never put myself in that situation again. You know, even in that situation, I'm not the victim. I'm a suspect. I shouldn't have never put myself in that situation. I should have never subjected myself to that.
You mentioned you went to jail. You got locked up.
Yes, sir.
How old were you when this happened?
First time I got locked up, 13, but I was going back and forth. I had this thing, breaking in cars, stealing radios, the block punt radios, the Concords, you know, Celica Supras. I could strip one of them clean, make about $300-400. 15 years old, I was rich.
That's good money for 15 at that time.
Good money, man. Yes, sir.
And you end up getting caught?
Several times. Yeah.
Several times. Okay, did you go to juvenile hall during any of these times?
I went to juvenile hall once. Went to juvenile hall. But
what was that like for you?
You know what? It was a fear that I had. People were saying this and that's going to happen when you get to juvenile hall, when you get to jail. When I got to juvenile hall, it was people I went to school with, people I knew already. It was, you know, I mean, it was a lot of new strangers, but people I hadn't seen in a while, that's where they were, in juvenile hall. So all the stories were lies. And that's probably one of the worst things that happened to me, is the fact that when I realized that I could maneuver through juvenile hall and wasn't no major issues, I had nothing to be afraid of on the streets. You couldn't tell me I'm gonna call the police and they're gonna put you in jail. I'm no longer afraid of jail.
And now, let me ask you, when you say that, we're talking about restorative justice, what you deal with, and it caught my ear when you said you wasn't afraid to go, and because during that era, they still believed in rehabilitation. So you could go in and come out as a form of now punishment. So let me ask you, do you believe that going to juvenile hall was also a form of bonding and camaraderie as far as the gangs, because of the elements of growing up together, to where it just was a continuing part of you maturing into the streets and the camaraderie?
Yeah, so going to jail at an early age just helped me to meet other bloods, helped me to meet other people who had the same struggles. And we had the same problem in there. There were Crips in there. And the Crips were the dominant, and you know, for every one blood, there were 7 or 8 Crips. So it built a family in there for me. It just solidified who I was going to become in the future. It was no rehabilitation, man. We was going to school on purpose to fight. You know, that was the purpose of going to school, is, man, you know, we gonna get down, you know, or find the opportunity to. So, or find a way to bang on each other, you know, to throw up your fingers, you know, and do the fuck you sign under your nose and all that, you know. So, yeah, I didn't get rehabilitated.
Now, and I say that because when we was going and started going 71 to 75, before they came up with the juvenile fitness end, they believed in rehabilitation. That's why we could get arrested 40 times within 4 years before that law came out. So that's why I see now, because by then we had 79, I was starting to go to prison, which was a whole new ball game. And the game changed from when you guys were the prey, because you say it's 7 to 1. When we started going to prison, it changed because of the BGF, Black Guerrilla Families, the UBN started coming out. We became the prey as Crips when we went through that juvenile cycle. We turned around and went up to prison, and they started trying to kill us, where it was 7 to 1 to 8 to 1. So I understand exactly what you're talking about.
You know, being outnumbered, did that kind of like, you know, put you in like more of a defensive mode?
That was horrible. Being outnumbered was horrible because, once again, once being outnumbered 7 to 1 and say 4 dudes fighting 15, 16 dudes, when they didn't knock us out, when they didn't beat the dog shit out of us, it's a horrible feeling because now my ego is driven again. Now my ego is saying, oh, I could do this. So, you know, everything that was meant to deter me from going where I was going actually was a fast track for me to get there. You know, getting into fights, getting jumped, all that, and not being, not going unconscious, not, you know, being stabbed and all that. It was a false sense of pride. So we would go back and high five. Like, man, we did that. You know, we say we beat them up, even though it's 15, 16, and we black eyes and we busted up. But, you know, we felt good that we fought them, which was false sense of pride. And it definitely affected me, made me think. And I was probably 100 pounds, if that. You know what I mean? But it gave me that a boy, you know.
What was high school like for you?
High school was high school. I went to Dorsey High School in South LA. And at the time, it was a predominantly Crip school. So I would be in and out. I would, you know, I wouldn't go to every class. I'd walk around and I would leave and go to the jungle. So I would spend most of my time up in the jungles and, you know, be trying to find a girl or somebody who mama ain't home and we can kick back, that type of stuff. So, you know, high school wasn't a learning experience for me. I just was disconnected.
You dropped out?
Oh yeah, definitely. Dropped out in 11th grade.
What was the jungles like during that time?
The jungles was another family. Everybody knew everybody. You can go to the jungles and buy a $10 bag of weed and we could roll some skinny joints. We rolled probably about 80, 90 joints and sell them $1 per joint and make money. The jungles always had something going on, somewhere to go, something to do. Being in the jungles, there were older guys who would come get some of the younger guys. Like I said, I was skinny. So they knock a hole in the wall, send me in there with a plastic bag, get all the Fila sweatsuits, the Elise, tennis shoes, all that. Come out, bring the bag to them, and I get like a sweat jacket. You know what I mean? I didn't realize I was being used, but it didn't matter. It was the price to pay to be with the OGs from around there.
Okay, and now that you're getting older, you know, 18, 19, 20, do you ever try to get a real job?
Yeah, I did. I tried to get a real job before, but when I got a real job and I got comfortable with the job, it was probably about 82. And now everybody is talking about selling crack and how to rock up crack. And, you know, this is the new drug. And, you know, a lot of people who have been selling weed was saying, man, this is, you know, a millionaire's drug. And now, you know, you got guys, Whitey's Enterprise, you know, got millions of dollars. A dude got a house in Laguna. You got Black Mike and Black Dave. You know, they driving Porsches. Everybody call him Harry O, but you know, back then he was Black Mike, Michael Harris. So you know, I got a lot of role models I'm looking at now, and eventually there was one, Freeway Rick, about 83, 84 came around. So I don't want to be like Mike. I don't want to be like Michael Jordan or Michael Jackson, Mike Tyson, none of them. I want to be like Freeway Rick. I want to be like Whitey. I want to be like these guys. So I started selling drugs.
How'd you get involved with that?
like I said, I had a job, and when I got fired from the job, it was no need for me to look for another job because everybody who I was around had access to people who had kilos of cocaine. So at that point, I gravitated towards that. Like I say, I just started hitting the block by block, trying to figure out which block was the best one for me where I could make the most money until I found one.
Okay, was this in your hood where you were growing up, or was this somewhere else?
No, so the first block I found that was worth a lot of money was actually on Hyde Park and Crenshaw. And it's crazy because that's not my neighborhood, not my area. And I was able to function there for about 8 months before key individuals from that community came to shut me down. And when the key individuals came to shut me down, I started buying my work from other key individuals in that community. Because they were having spats with each other, it you know, eventually they burned my place down. They didn't take my life though; they could have killed me, and they didn't. They just burned my house down, and that was a message for me to get out of there. Stole my 6.4 Impala, burned my house, so I moved back. You know, started doing stuff in my own neighborhood. It wasn't a lot of money, and I found another spot.
Growing up, you mentioned you were with your mom.
Mm-hmm.
And your mom was involved in the streets too?
Mom was not involved in the streets, never been in a police car, never been arrested, none of that. She total square, but she grew up on 20th and Naomi, which is, you know,
rough.
That's a rough area, you know what I mean?
How'd your mom feel when she found out you were involved in the streets?
You know what, for the most part, I want to say that she didn't approve of it. My mother always thought I should get a good education, get a job, work somewhere for 30 years, and you know, that's what she wanted for me. But my mother always wanted me to be a suspect and never a victim. She always told me somebody hit me, hit them back. If they're bigger than you, pick up something, knock the dog shit out of them. You know, sometimes I got to hit them first, whatever. So my mother taught me that I should fight. My mother was so deep into that sometimes she would lock the door, you know, because she's a single woman raising 3 boys. So she like, oh, you better go do something. You better. I'm like, Mama, it's not my fight. She's like, you better not let nobody chase you home. You know, she would give us 50 cents, maybe $1. Better not come home talking about somebody took it. You know, the bike she would buy for us, shit, can't let nobody steal it. You know what I mean? That type of thing. So she was always one to push me to be. Violence was the answer.
And was your dad around?
So my dad was around, but he was, you know, he was going to school. He was working to be a doctor. He was a physician assistant. You know, he was educated and kept going to college, kept going to school. And, you know, I mean, him and my mother split up. So he was Easter, Christmas, sometime during the summer. You know, he was there 4 or 5 times a year. And I can't blame him, you know. That was partially my mother too, not wanting to be around him. So, you know, we went to him, it was like punishment. You know what I mean? It wasn't like cool, you know.
So you didn't see him that much?
Yeah, so I see him about 4 or 5 times a year. When he took us around, he always trying to take us around families, or with no family, stuff like that. But he wasn't every day in my life. I couldn't go home and tell my father, hey, look, man, I just got jumped, or these dudes trying to jump. You know, it wasn't like that. You know? Yeah.
Do you think that had an effect on you getting into the streets?
Oh, definitely.
You mentioned you had 3 brothers,
2,
right?
Well, I got, with my mother, I have 2 brothers. But
2 brothers.
I do have 3 brothers, one with my father as well.
Were they involved in the streets at all too?
My oldest brother was not, but my brother that's a year and a half, 2 years older than me, he was involved in the streets, and he ended up smoking sherm, and, you know, kind of, his mentality stayed like even to this day, his mentality is far behind because of the drugs he used. My other brother, he was about 14 and he became a beast in the streets, and went to prison a couple of times, but he turned to money. He's a truck driver, owns property, you know, so he turned his life around. You know, he went to prison a couple of times, but you know, so it was something he did at 14, but by the time he was 25, 26, I think he's 40 now, you know, he was done with it. So it lasted a good 10 years or so.
That's good.
Yeah,
I mean, you know.
that's how it's supposed to be. It's childish. So, You know, once a person turns 21, 22, it's supposed to be a lifestyle change. You know, I don't want to do the same things at 21, 22 that I was doing at 13 and 14.
Right. It seems like today, though,
they're 50.
It's extended, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And it wasn't designed to be that way. If you look back at Raymond Washington, if you look back at Tookie, you look back at Puddin', Tam, Baba Louie, all the dudes who, you know, were credited with starting this, they were children. They were 13, 14 years old. So why at the age of 35 or 40 would I be following in the direction that was laid out for me by a 13-year-old?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make sense to me right now.
Did you mention you grew up around the corner from Tookie?
Well, no, there was a girl who Tookie used to go see who lived around the corner.
Oh, okay.
And around that corner was Cutes, Mouse, Rusty, Frank, another family that was well-to-do on 68th. And on 69th, you know, Monster Cody and his whole crew was over there on 69th. So that was about 4 years of my life. That was like 1973 to 1977. I lived on 66 and Dinker.
Did you have any run-ins with him?
Oh, definitely. Not with Tookie. Me and my friends, we was kids. We go in the house, we hear Tookie's around the corner. We're not going around the corner. But I used to play with Frank, which is Cute's little brother. That was my skating ring partner. But as far as Monster Cody, he sent everybody on 69th Street to come fight me. You know, I used to ride my bike, riding down the street. You know, he's sending them, like, go get Skip Bike. You know, I used to have a paper route over there. So I'm riding down 69th throwing papers. So as soon as he see me, he tell him, man, get the papers, take Skip papers, take his bike. So I had to fight everybody over there. But the one thing is he never came and fought me. So, you know, we talked about that one time, 1982, 83, you know, and he was telling me then he was trying to make me tough. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah, he did. Same thing my mama told me, fight everybody. So you got to look at that upbringing, fight everybody, fight everybody. Everybody's saying that. The kids in the neighborhood saying that. Parents at home saying that. And then they wonder why my generation was fighting everybody. Because if every parent tell their children, if somebody hits you, hit them back, who's the one parent that's going to say, wait, if somebody hits you, why don't you figure out what happened? How can y'all solve this? You know, how can we do some mediation? How can we do resolution? No parent said that. Every parent said, you better hit them, you better whoop their ass.
Yeah. I mean, that was also before the gangs were like full blown, right?
Had nothing to do with gangs. It was just every parent wanted their child to not come home being bullied.
Right.
Regardless of gangs or what.
Yeah. I mean, I could see it's, you know, it'd be a little bit different now, right? I mean, raising your kid, I mean, because if you teach them to fight everybody,
right,
you get shot.
Oh, yeah, you can get dead by one of them.
Right.
Right.
So, I mean, you know, that was just, you know, you know, my dad, you know, growing up, he used to fight all the time too, you know. I mean, I got in a lot of fights when I was a kid too, but, you know, it was a little different. Right. You know, we had to be more cautious of, you know, the guns.
Right.
You know, versus, you know, when my dad was a kid, it was like, you know, it was maybe once in a while someone got stabbed.
Right.
You know, or something, you know, maybe someone would get shot. But
yeah, they had chains or they pick up sticks and stuff like that. And then eventually it turned to where they had 22s and shotguns. And that got scary. But then after the 22s, the 38 specials and the shotguns, somewhere in the mid-80s, now they got assault rifles. Now by 88, everybody got assault rifles and they got money. And people are influenced not by the guy who was big and could fight, but now they're influenced by the guy with the money. So now they'll shoot anybody and kill everybody, you know.
What was that transition like, seeing that go from where you were fighting into now, you know, it's assault rifles and, you know, people are really dying?
Yeah, so like that took place from like 1982 when I first started selling drugs. And then by 85 and 86, I was an influence. And like I said, I was probably 120 pounds, but I was a major influence. And it felt good to me to be that influence, but I didn't look at it from a deeper perspective. I just looked at the surface, like, you know, look, I got money and I'm an influence and I'm cool. But in 88, I came home from prison. I went to prison in 86, 87. When I came home in 88, it was actually scary. I thought to myself, I said, I'm definitely gonna die this year. I just knew it. I couldn't go a week without being shot at, or, you know, people coming through wherever I was. You know, it was always something going on. First day I got home from prison, I got shot at. So, you know, not the first day, but the next day I got shot at. So it was like, I knew for a fact I'm gonna die.
What'd you go to prison for, if you don't mind me asking?
Selling drugs.
Selling drugs, okay.
Yeah.
And you know, 2 years?
Yeah, it was a 5-year sentence, but in the state of Nevada, you do a third of the time. So I did 10 months in jail and 19 months in prison. So I did a total of about 24, 25.
Okay, and you get home and things are completely different for you?
Yes, it was much wilder. It was beginning to get wild when I went to prison, but when I came home, it was the Wild Wild West.
Did you go right back to selling drugs?
Not right back. It took about maybe 4 or 5 months, and one of the things that happened is just the police had pulled me over and tried to give me a drug charge. I was going through the jungles, and there was some youngsters that I didn't know, and one of my partners was introducing me to them. So they stuck their hand in the car. We shaking hands. We're talking for about 5 or 10 minutes. And when I drove off, there was a sting operation, and the police said I was over there buying drugs. So they looking through the car for drugs. They took my car, took me to jail, gave me a parole violation, and they were saying that I was over there buying, like, you know, $20 or $40 worth of drugs, and it really pissed me off, because I had just went to jail for having 13 kilos of cocaine and, you know, so many thousands of dollars, and they say I'm over there trying to buy $40 worth of drugs, and it pissed me off. But I ended up getting out, continue on parole, but I was like, I didn't want to be square. I just want to go back to making money, because that's ridiculous.
They violated you for no reason.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, violated me, impounded my car, all that. So.
How long were you in jail?
That time it was 2 weeks, but I got another violation for burglary that they said happened in 1987, and I was already in custody. By May of '87, I was already in prison when that happened. So I did 6 months on that. And the judge let me out, not because it's impossible for me to break out of prison, go break into a house, and then break back into prison. He didn't let me go for that. He let me go because they had due diligence. He said they should have came to me in prison and presented me with the charges because I was in custody. So he didn't let me out because it's retarded. How could I get out of prison to do a burglary? He let me out because they didn't come charge me with the burglary while I was in custody.
You did 6 months in jail for a crime that happened when you were in jail.
While I was in prison.
Or prison.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Right. But that's how it was back then. You know, they make up something. Even the officer who arrested me, he asked me whatever happened to that burglary case. And I said, I beat it. And they said, well, how long were you in? I said, 6 months. He said, well, you didn't beat it. He said, you did 6 months on it. I was like, damn, you're right. I beat it in court, but I didn't beat it in time.
Right.
But, yeah.
You still did 6 months, even though you didn't do it.
Right.
They still got you for that. What do you think was like one of the most wildest things you've seen during these times?
I guess during the 80s, the wildest thing I saw was how good good-hearted people were making lots of money, way more money than I was. And people were coming to kill them, to rob them. So it wasn't as if they were going to come and just take their jewelry or take their money or whatever. They were coming into their house, kidnapping their kids, putting them in the trunk of the cars. They were coming after everybody who had money. And I believe that had I not gone to prison, I would have been one of them. You know, I'd have been somebody's target. I'd have had to have shootouts and fight my way out of stuff. So I think that was one of the craziest things I saw back then, is how all the guys who had millions of dollars, somebody was coming to get them.
These guys are hustling for the money, though.
Hustling for the money, yes.
Right, okay.
They were the jackers, you know, the guys who was jacking people was coming to get all them.
Okay, so at what point do you decide to quit?
You know what? I decided that I was in Memphis, Tennessee, and there was this guy who was I don't know if he was a federal agent or what, but every time I come through the airport, he'd be on my bumper. He'd you know, search my bag and do all this stuff, and it was hard for me to maneuver. I mean, he was on me. So at that point, I felt like I had stuffed like $10,000 in my pocket and put it in my bag, and they had told me that the dog smelled drugs in my bag. I knew it was Cap. When I went downstairs, the dog is just sitting there looking around, and I saw a dog before who smelled drugs. And the dog chased his tail. He took a shit in the middle of the floor. The dog was going crazy. But this dog was just sitting there, laying there. So I'm like, man, y'all lying. He ain't smelled nothing. Look, he's chill. And they said, well, we'll just get a warrant. They got a warrant and took the $10,000 from me. And I was like, it's costing me too much money. I'm not going to be able to do this. I can't drive on the freeway because I'll get pulled over in Texas. You know, it's like, I said, man, I just got to do something different.
It just became too hard for you to maneuver and make it happen.
Too hard to maneuver. And I saw too many other people going to prison, you know, getting 20 and 30 years for a little bit of nothing, you know. That was the, what they call the Lynn Bias law, or one of them, I forgot, one of them basketball players.
Lynn Bias, right?
Lynn Bias.
Cocaine overdose, right?
Well, yeah, heart attack, whatever.
Heart
but
attack.
yeah, but he,
that's right.
From what I understand, he had cocaine. He didn't even have crack, but they made it to where anybody with crack would get 10 times the amount of time, the maximum minimum. All the drug laws that Clinton and them put together in the 90s, I saw that go into an effect, and people were actually doing 20 and 30 years for something that, like I said, I got caught and got a 5-year sentence for earlier. You know, so now it was like, you're not going to get a 5-year sentence, you're going to get about 55 years for the same thing. So what I got caught for, the feds had originally charged us for 55 years, and they dropped it, and the state picked it up. So they were saying, okay, that's not going to happen anymore. You know, with these mandatory minimums, they was like, man, you're going to do at least 20 or 30. So I was like, I'm cool. I'm good.
What was it like seeing Freeway Rick and Harry O and all them come up?
It was motivation for me. You know, like I say.
Did you know Freeway Rick?
Yeah, I know Freeway Rick. And the cool part about Freeway Rick is when I met Freeway Rick, he had on a sagging T-shirt. You know, it looked like he slept in it. He had dreads. He was real skinny. It was a V-neck. Had on some jeans. And, you know, when I saw the other guys that I seen, they always had gold chains, a Porsche, you know, a Rolls Royce, stuff like that. But when I met Freeway Rick, one of my cousins brought him to me in a Cutlass that, you know, had one headlight out, and, you know, seatbelts didn't work. And I'm like, damn. He's like, man, that's Freeway Rick. I was like, damn. So yeah, that was. But you know, just being able to maneuver through LA the way they did, it motivated me, and I wanted to have a Porsche. I wanted to have convertible Benzes and stuff like that. So I tried to aspire to be like Harry. Everybody know Harry O, but Harry O's brother Dave, Black Dave, had a lot of money. He was one of my role models. He had a slant nose Porsche. So yeah, I want to get a slant nose Porsche like Black Dave, and, you know, be able to have my name ring bells like Freeway Rick. And Whitey had an entourage. Whitey fed everybody. Whitey had millions of dollars, but everybody in his crew had nice cars, gold chains, fur coats. So I aspired to be like Whitey, you know, as well. So
seeing all this, you know, made you want to, you know, move up to them levels and, you know, make all that money and everything. How far did you actually make it?
I would say that as I first started and I was buying what they called an 8-track to make it, well, the guys I was looking up to already had a ½ ounce or an ounce. So by the time I got to a ½ ounce or an ounce, they were already selling 18 ounces, a half a key, or selling a whole key, you know, 36 ounces. So when I made it to 18 ounces and buying half a keys or whatever, they had 5 and 10 keys. You know, so by the time I got to 5 and 10 keys, either they were already in prison or they were getting hundreds of keys. There were some dudes getting hundreds of keys and hiding them in their neighbor's yard, and buying an old raggedy car and putting it in the driveway and having all the keys and that. So I never made it to where they were. Every time I moved a step further, the guys that I want to be like were way far beyond what I was doing.
Now you get to the point where you've turned your life around and you want to do something different. What is like the first thing do you do? Do you get a job?
Yeah, so I got a job. I was working for a refrigeration company, and they hired ex-felons, parolees, but I didn't have my mind right. I wasn't ready for that, to be at work at 6 o'clock in the morning. I get there 6:05, 6:15. I felt entitled, and, that became a problem. And there was a guy in there who used to always tell us, man, y'all gonna get fired. Don't let Bill Hunter see you. And, at some point I said, man, fuck Bill Hunter. I didn't want this. I bought a truck, got some equipment on the back of my truck, and I started driving tow trucks, becoming my own boss. That way, if I don't work, I don't eat. And I knew then that was best for me. And now, all of a sudden, I used to hate getting up in the morning, but now I'm getting up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, driving this tow truck. I didn't mind, because I would see my rewards that day. The first week of me driving a tow truck, I made $1,100. And I said, oh, this is close to drug money. It's legal. I don't have to run for the police. But later on, I found I did have to run from the police, because I had to have certain licenses, had to, go to the police commission office downtown. There were certain police officers that would run everybody's name in the morning, like, like a gang unit, except it was for tow trucks.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
okay.
it became an issue, but it's still, that's what I did all the way until 2005, 2006. That's when I quit.
Oh, with the tow trucks.
Yeah.
Oh, so you did it for a while.
Yeah, I did it for a while. I became one of the most requested tow truck drivers. I towed for Denzel Washington, the Moving Training Day. I'm the one who put the 7 Monte Carlos together. I used to tow for Brandy. I used to tow for Floyd Mayweather, all the different celebrities, Master P. I used to work for a company called 310 Motoring, 310 Motoring. And we did all the Cash Money videos, everything for Baby and his brother Slim. So, I became one of the most requested tow truck driver. But I felt like something was missing. I felt like I was, my kids were growing up in the same community, and they were wearing the same colors and doing the same thing. And I just felt like it wasn't, chasing money wasn't what I was here to do. I had beat a life sentence in 1998. So I knew that I had a purpose, and I don't know what the purpose was, but I knew it wasn't to drive a tow truck.
In 1998, you beat a life sentence. Man,
I'm facing 2 life sentences in 6 years. I'm in LA County Jail. My father died. I went to the hole. I'm doing time in the hole. Can't talk to my family. And I just got to praying to God, if you let me out, I'm going to change my life, everything. I'm going to turn it around, this and that. And when I got a hung jury and I got an acquittal on one, I went home and jumped in a tow truck. That's when I started working with 310, and I thought that was my life, to drive to Georgia, drive to Detroit, take Paul Pierce's car. Him and his father was in Boston, so I'm thinking, I used to tow for BMF, for them guys. They have issues. I go get the vans and wherever they break down at, and I'm not asking no questions, just, doing whatever I'm asked to do. Where am I taking it to? So that was my life, being on the freeway with all these cars. But at some point, I said, this is not, it's not self-fulfilling, it's not rewarding, it's not answering the call that I told God I would do.
That must have been rough. I mean, facing a life sentence, man. What all happened that had you in that situation?
Well, just the fact that I had long hair and glasses, and the people that got shot said, oh, that was Skip, and the police like, oh yeah, the skinny dude with the glasses. So it was another situation where I did so many things wrong, but I was like, yeah, but I didn't do this one. I've done a lot wrong, but I said, this one isn't me. But, so I sat there just thinking to myself, is this payback for all the other things I've done? But I was like, nah, I got to get up out of here.
How long were you fighting it?
I fought it for a whole year. So it happened in 1995, and I got arrested in January 1998, and I was released November 98. So I was at 11 months.
What was the trial like?
trial was horrible because there was a guy who was an ex-fire captain, had a thick mustache. He looked like a motorcycle cop, and I didn't want him on the jury at all. But there was another lady, and I call her Yes, the Yes lady, because any question they asked her, they say, yes, that's okay, yes. And they said, well, we can finish today by 2, 3 o'clock, or we can get started Monday. You know, everybody, you know, do you want to start today or Monday? And everybody said, start today, or we'll start Monday. And got to this lady, and she said, yes, it's okay. And I'm like, man, I got to get rid of her. She's going to say yes to everything. So I got rid of her and kept the guy with the thick mustache, and he was one of the main components of helping me get out. He said they didn't have enough evidence. He was looking for that aha moment. He never felt it. And I was like, damn. And just by the way he looks and the fact that he was a fire captain, I was ready to kick him off. Yeah, so shit, when I got found, when I got acquittal, not guilty on 2 charges, shit, he started crying.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was like, man, you know, that was it was something special. And that's the second time I put my mother through that. You know, the first time is when I went to jail for the drugs out of state. So my mother's in court, and, you know, she runs out crying. So, yeah, I knew that I'm really messing up, man. I'm tearing down my family, you know.
Yeah. Wow, man, that's, you know, big, you know.
Yeah.
That's a good thing you ended up beating that, and,
Right.
you know, everything worked out for you. Definitely, man. That's... What was hip-hop like during those times?
Oh, man, that was crazy.
Or even in, like, the 80s?
Oh, so shit, hip-hop in the 80s was man, it's super rhymes. You know, we had all the New York stuff. We was Curtis Blow, you know, all that, won the Christmas raps and basketball and Run DMC, Peter Piper, whatever that song was, you know. So it was really good back then. And I think all we had out here was Ice-T until I got out in '88, and that's when I heard about NWA and, you know, started listening to Ice Cube and all them, and rap totally changed. Like, you know, for 90, 91, Ice Cube and WA and, you know, E40 and Short, Too Short, all that. But in 1998 is when Dr. Dre decided to get back with Snoop and them, when Snoop was with Master P, and then, you know, when that whole Death Row thing was kind of fading away, and all them songs that they made with Nate Dogg and all that, hip hop was on again, you know, for the West Coast at least, because it had moved down south. And even though it kind of stayed, you know, Ludacris started bumping, you know, everything was going good for Ludacris back then too. And Missy Elliott was a dope writer, and everything started coming full circle, you know, but for everybody.
Were you out when the movie Colors came out?
Yes, I just got out. That was '88.
88.
Yeah.
I've heard stories about, like, the song Colors, like,
Right.
clubs being torn up over
Right.
fights and people fighting. Did you ever see anything like that?
Well, I never went to clubs. As Bloods, you know, we low key, because anytime we go to a club, it's predominantly Crips. But, you know, it definitely was an inspiration. It was a boost. It was, you know, it helped keep shit going. I could tell you that, because, you know, like I say, now we feel invincible. Like, oh, they know about us. Well, we about to show them who we are. So it wasn't really clubs, but movie theaters. So back then, the first black movie theater was on La Brea and Coliseum in the jungles. And it showed Colors. And if you wasn't a Blood, you could not go to that movie theater. Just without a doubt. Bloods inside, Bloods outside, Bloods coming from everywhere. So, yeah, it was like really a inspiration for, I can only speak for the Bloods. I can't speak for how the Crips felt about it, but.
That was the movie theater where all the Bloods would go watch the movie.
Yeah.
I take it.
Right.
Okay.
But I know that the guys who were instrumental in that was from 8-9 East Coast, you know, the jailhouse scene. They had real Crips in the jailhouse scene, but they didn't have real Bloods at first, you know, so that made a difference too when we don't get to see our people. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, those are actors. The Bloods was actors in there, but they had real Crips. And
you're talking about the scene where it's like Crips on one side and the Bloods on the other side?
Right.
Okay.
I think it was Don Cheadle. He went in there and he was with one of the Crips. So, you know, that was one of the things too, like, man, the way that they portrayed the Bloods, it kind of, you know, it was like, man, they made us like, I don't know, like secondhand citizens. So, you know, it was, you know, like it was like a Crip movie, you know, and the Mexicans. And for us in South LA, it didn't go like that, where the black and the Mexicans, you know, were getting at a Mexican gang. The blacks and Mexicans together, Bloods or Crips, would get at the Bloods and Crips. But not at, you know, we not going against the Harpies or the 18th Streets or nothing like that. You know what I mean? White fence or nothing like that. But so it was kind of not a real, you know, take on South LA, but it might have been for Pacoima, might have been for Sylmar, might have been for, you know, Frogtown or Dogtown, East LA or something, or even the Maravillas, but not for South LA.
You mentioned it being an inspiration, the movie.
Yeah.
What do you mean by inspiration? Like
inspiration to bang. It did not. It to be honest, it glorified it. It glorified it. It means that there's an outlet. It meant that someone was looking and watching and want to see how we interact with each other.
I remember when the movie came out. It was like, it was a big deal. It was a big thing, man. Like, I remember a lot of people were watching it. You know, a lot of people who might not even been familiar with gangs at the time were watching the movie and seeing this, you know. What was the impact overall? You know, I mean, besides just inspiring people, you know, to do
well, I think at that time, 1988, 1989, it was a major uprising. Like I said, I didn't think I would live through those times. You know, it was everyday shooting. You got to figure back in those days, and people are complaining about right now, but back in those days, it was 900 to 1,000 homicides a year in South LA. I mean, in Los Angeles, period. So right now, the homicides in LA, you know, they're rising to upwards of 350, almost 400, but it's nothing compared to 88, 89, or even 1992, 93 had the most, 1,200, 1,100 and 1,200 homicides. So we averaged out at about 700, 800 around those times. And so, you know, I want to say it made it okay. Colors and Boys in the Hood and Menace to Society, it made it okay. It was telling a story, even the music. It was telling a story, but it made the story okay.
Mm.
You know, so it's what we're expected to do. It's what's expected of us. And people will say, "Oh man, it's just sharing the experience." You know, this is the black experience, but there was never a solution. It was never the same amount of energy and input to quell the violence or stop it. It was just to show it. You know, so it wasn't a healthy balance of violence and then alternatives to violence.
I see. See. Okay, well, and now you've turned things around.
Yeah.
You do a lot of work in the community. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, even speaking alternative to violence, last year there was a big push for defund the police. One of the things we do at Leimert Park is we have ambassadors. So second call, we have ambassadors at Leimert Park, where every day we are the first responders. Instead of calling law enforcement, we're the ones who help with the mental health issues. We're the ones who help with the homelessness. So, I mean, the police can still come whenever they want, but I have 5 individuals who actually work at the park daily, and they help with the mental health status of individuals who need us to call the mental health to come out and help them, or the homeless population. We help them get relocated if they want it. But a lot of it is drug use. But what we want to do is stop LAPD from being confrontational with the community. So one of the things I do is I have ambassadors that work with me, and we're looking to expand that as well.
Has it helped out any?
Oh yes, definitely. Definitely. There, since we've been there, we got there in June, and from June till now, there hasn't been a excessive force, a use of force with LAPD in that area. Since then, my ambassadors work from dusk to dawn. There was one homicide that happened like 1 in the morning, so my ambassadors weren't there, but it was in the McDonald's outside of Leimert Park. But there hasn't been any incidents reported from June till January 1st. So it's truly working out. You know, the communities come together. We brought the politicians in with the community, you know, brought them to sit at the table together. And the community stated that they had never had that before. So it's a number of things that's working. Yeah.
Okay, that's what's up, man. What is there anything else you're working on?
Oh yeah, a lot. We're also the job coordinators for Destination Crenshaw. So the council office, Council District 8, is building Sankofa Park, and they're building platforms from Slauson, which is Nipsey Hussle Square, from Slauson and Crenshaw down to Vernon and Crenshaw. So what they want to do is they want to have the face of the community working there. So, you know, anytime a job goes up, they have to have 30% of the community. But that could be 30% could be Asian, white, Hispanic, black. But what they want to do is make sure that because this is a black platform to show that this was the historical value of the black community, they want to have the black face. So we're responsible for having 70% local hire. Not just 30%, but 70%, and the majority of having the black face. And so we're the job coordinators for that piece, working with PCL Construction and the owners of Destination Crenshaw. So we're actually helping people get employed, you know, people who come from the community. And my goal was to have the Rolling 60 Crips and the Inglewood Family Bloods and, you know, to work together on the project. And so far we've done that. So that's one of the ways that I bring peace to the community.
That's what's up. And how long have you been doing all this?
I've been doing this since 2005. Before 2005, I used to run from this guy named Darren Bo Taylor. But 2005, when Tookie Williams was killed by the state of California, there's another guy named Ronnie Barron who was talking to students at the school. And I said, man, I got to get involved. This is what I'm home for. This is why I didn't get that life sentence, so I could help the community and do this work.
So ever since then, it's just been, that's been your passion and your purpose.
Well, it's been my passion for the first 3 or 4 years, but then it became my purpose. And there's a difference between passion and purpose. With the passion, it's just emotion. So I'm just out there emotional, ready to help everybody. But with the purpose, now I'm serious about it. With the purpose, now I'm not dealing with emotions. I'm dealing with logic and reason. How can I help people? How can I really be a resource to the community? And I'm a resource to the community.
And how did you meet Melvin?
I met Melvin just doing the work. You know, Melvin Farmer, he, you know, doing the work in the community, he was one of the top people I had to meet. We used to have a softball league at St. Andrews Park, and I played softball up there, and I used to always think, you know, about the different guys from around that area, because when I lived on 66 and Dinker, that's the same area, you know, it's the A-Trade gangster area. So I met Brother Rayford, and I met Melvin, who are the main figures who started the A-Trade Gangster Crips. So
you guys been working together ever since? Yes,
indeed. Ceasefire right there on 79th and Western at the Bethel AME Church. That's where they had Tookie's funeral. And, you know, Melvin's a major part of that community, you know, from the history and for the future.
Well, Skip, recently you went viral. You know, unfortunately, Slim400 was killed. And, you know, this was, you know, kind of close to me because, you know, I didn't know him personally, but, you know, we did a couple interviews. You know, he was always a good, humble dude, you know, always about his business. You know, it was sad to see that happen to Slim. But you went viral for chiming in and deterring things from going further. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so first of all, to be a peacemaker and to speak about things, it comes with a lot of defense. There are people who are against it. There are people who want to see the foolishness continue. There are people who also want to, you know, feel as if they're important and want to say what should happen and what shouldn't happen. But as a peacemaker, if there isn't peace there, I got to bring peace. So I went out to the scene. I got a couple of phone calls that Slim had got killed in Inglewood. And then I'm looking at Instagram and I see that they say Slim got killed in the 60s and killed by the 60s. So what I did is I'm calling all the people I know from Inglewood, And one of the dudes is like, man, I'm at work. Where you at? And I said, I'm around the corner. And he said, man, why you? He said, I heard it was at the liquor store. And I was like, man, I heard it was in the alley. So he said, man, go see and call me and tell me. So when I went over there and I didn't see nobody out and didn't see anything going on over there, just the fact that the homicide detectives was out, I started filming that. And immediately telling people it didn't happen in the 60s. It's right here. I'm on the South Side Alley off of Manchester, right at 7th Avenue. And there was no one else out there. So I posted that, and then people started coming. I laid down and went to sleep. And right before I went to sleep, one of my older homeboys from Inglewood called me and said, Skip, when you was out there filming, I was next door. He said, I was next door. He said, me and the homie's uncle's next door. And so he started telling me what he heard. And he heard a high-pitched voice. Now, what I found out later is that was Slim400's voice. But he was thinking like, man, Slim was arguing with a girl. Skip, man, we heard the argument, whatever, the shots and this and that. So I'm like, oh, man, that's something personal. That ain't no rolling 60s Inglewood family. He said, nah, man, that's something personal. So when I go to sleep, now my phone started ringing, and it's a guy from Rolling 60s, right? And he got TMZ on the line, and everybody got 2, 3 Rolling 60s. He like, Skip, man, they shooting Slauson and West Boulevard, Slauson and Western. Somebody might be dead on Florence and Crenshaw right now. He says an attack on the Rolling 60s based on what someone else said, saying it was the Rolling 60s. So he said, man, can you go back out there? I said, man, I'm not going to go back out there live and say it wasn't the 60s. But he said, man, can you go back and say something? So a lot of people saying, man, why you didn't tell him to do it? You know, why'd you do it yourself? So a lot of people angry, upset about that. But I just felt like in order to save lives, I got to do rumor control. That's one of the things I do as an interventionist is rumor control. So I went back live and said, hey, look, man, I'm listening to my homie who was next door saying that was personal. And then I'm on the phone with the 60s saying, man, enough is enough. They coming through shooting. Man, they ain't had nothing to do with it. Even though there is a war right now between those two communities, they ain't got nothing to do with it. The war don't have nothing to do with it. Slim400 had nothing to do with that war. And man, it probably saved a number of lives, but it made a number of people pissed off. People that I don't even know was calling people that I know saying, tell Skip something, something, something. You know, so I got calls from a couple of young ladies in Compton that I'm really close with. A couple of my homeboys out the 20s called me saying they getting phone calls. One of my homeboys was in Seattle, Washington, from Blackstone. He called me and said, man, no, we've got to stop. I'm getting calls on this. So Inglewood families was, you know, upset about a couple of things. So yeah, a lot of people was angry, but how many people are alive because of that? You know, just stopping the rumor. You know, it's real easy to say what happened, you know, and people just take that for face value, but they never stop and do the leg work to start calling to see what didn't happen. I don't want to know what happened. I want to know what didn't happen so I could save somebody's life.
How often does something like this happen where you have to do these rumor controls? It
happens every day. Every time there's a shooting, I do rumor control. It's just not that it don't go viral. So doing rumor control, a lot of times it's just being on the phone with different guys saying, come on, squash the rumor, kill the noise. But Slim400, it went viral because I put it on Instagram. So because of that, it times 10. But this happens every day. Every time somebody's murdered, there's always somebody who's saying, this is what happened, that's what happened. You're like, well, were you there? Did you see it? And they'd be like, no, that's what I was told. You know, and then that rumor just travels and travels and it grows, just like the song The Temptations say. You know, it keeps growing. So.
Did you want to touch on this, Melvin?
Yeah, the night Slim400 was slain, I had just come back from Texas with the incident with Charleston White. So my name was popping on the internet, so I get a call from Kev Mack. I go on Kev Mack's show. But the night Slim400 was slain, I had went on the Mel Gibson show that night. So that ended about 10 or 11, and I get a call early in the morning from Melly Mel. We just lost the good one. So I said, well, what you talking about? From Compton or from my side of town or my side of the tracks? He said, no, Slim400. So with that being said, I went to surfing the internet because, you know, remember 2015, that KP incident happened that started the 100 Days, 100 Nights.
Right.
And so from there, as I'm sure Skip will attest, we know how the misuse of the internet could cost somebody life. To get taken because of rumors. So I say, well, let me look up Skip, because I know he does these type of interviews, which I've also done, from Hannah Bell and other ones, the Red Shoe Murder and other ones during this course as a community activist. And from there I went to Skip, and I looked at his video, which ended up going viral, but this before it had even went to the, I believe, the Instagram. This is when you was just doing the Facebook, when you was laying early in the morning. And that is one of the reasons why we're here, because I thought it was very important because of the culture and the slandering and things and rumors that are going on now within this culture on social media. The Wax 100, the Charleston White, my boy McDonald, Mob James, and we have privilege because we talk, you know, you got, before social media, it used to be telephone or tell a Negro, and that's how this still goes. So there's an underground railroad that exists, not only in California and Los Angeles, but across the nations, where these intervention programs are starting to interact. So I thought it was very important that the public also see the other side of what goes on to prevent further bloodshed when something of this nature happens.
Whenever somebody gets killed and you guys have to like try to calm things down, you know, because there's a lot of rumors, a lot of this, you know, this person did it, that person did it. Is it a lot of people you got to talk to? Like, what's kind of like the process that you guys go through to prevent it from becoming bigger than what it has to be?
So the main thing for me is when someone is murdered, I want to deal with the family. I want to deal with the neighborhood. I want to deal with the closest brother, the closest uncle. I want to deal with the person who's going to be emotional, because they the ones who are going to want to go out. So I'm asking them, what's happening, what's going on? And in that, I'm going to hear the rumors. They're going to say, oh, they said whoop-de-whoop did it, whoop-de-whoop. So how do you know that that happened? How do you know they did it? As a matter of fact, in my phone, I have to have relationships with other communities, so I can call over there and say, hey man, they saying something happened over here and y'all did it. And be able to say, man, well, they saying they didn't do it. You know, how do we know? What kind of car was it? You know, and whatever it takes, going to the hospital, buying food, staying with them at the house. I want to keep them with me, because as long as they with me, I know they're not dead or in jail. They're not going back retaliating. So I want to keep people with me as long as possible. I want to get other family members to help me out and keep them or whatever. I got to call other intervention workers like, hey man, they at the park, man. Can you go up to the park and talk with them while I'm over here at the family? Tell them I'm going to let them know what the family is saying, you know. Sometimes they go to the hospital and we already know they dead, but they in the hospital. So as long as there's no official whatever, we could say, man, they still in the hospital. They working on them. Just whatever it takes to prolong, to hurry up and go back and just shoot anybody. Because that's what people do. They'll just go back and shoot anybody, and sometimes they shoot the wrong somebody. You know, they don't have it right. And a lot of information the police get, they get it from the community members. So they don't have the right information either. So the word that's traveling and going around is always off the top wrong. And it takes about 2-3 days to get the right information. But how many people have been shot within the first 2 hours?
That's just so dope that you guys are able to, you know, step in and save probably a lot of lives.
Yes,
I mean, if you're dealing with this type of thing, I mean, LA, you know, South LA, you know, we know its reputation. So there's always these types of things going on, you know, that you guys, I mean, I'm sure you guys probably save hundreds, if not, you know, much more lives, man. And that's just dope.
Yes, sir.
You know,
there's a lot of people too who say, man, don't call me. A lot of people will say, man, I'm not with it. I'm not having it, man. Y'all, you know, do y'all thing, but I'm gonna do me. You know, and somehow, some way, I got to figure out how to get to that person. You know, there's been plenty of times, you know, even when Nipsey Hussle, when he was killed, you know, it was a process the next 2 days where we started coming together to I'm not sure if you're familiar with what happened that Friday when about 1,500 of us, Melvin was right there. We all walked from the Ralphs to that. So it took a process for that. And there was one guy who was just adamant, like, man, y'all busters, y'all better not listen to Skip. And what I realized is now he's one of my best friends because he wanted to be involved, because he wanted to be a part of it. Like, you know, so why you don't call me there? Why you don't take me to stuff like that? So sometimes there's people who are hating from the background because they're not at the table. And there are people who are hating from the background because if the war is over, well, they can't read or write or get a job. So what they gonna do? All their charm and charisma came from them being Tiny Killer or whatever they are, you know. But when I say, man, you gotta be Theodore, let's help you get a job, they'll run from it. So some people are gravitating to the foolishness because they have absolutely nothing else. You know.
Also, speaking about the Nipsey Hussle, he's talking about the LA gangs unite, the way they went over there and the gangs and on the west side and south central Los Angeles came together in solidarity that day in honor of Nipsey Hussle, because as everybody know, he's from that side of town, the west side. But more importantly, it's the fact that this was an opportunity for elected officials to come in and help facilitate and continue the dialogue that had been created by community influencers that otherwise would not have even been talking because of that. And that's where the ball gets dropped a lot of times when it comes to inner city violence and redefining our community, is that when these youths and those out here that have the input to make a change in the community, we don't get the support that we need or the ears to where our voices are heard. So I want to thank you for having us on here to give us the platform to let people see what really goes on the other side of the fence.
And just real quick with that, when everybody came together, I just want to give credit to a young lady named Latanya Ward. It was her push. She pushed Lil AD to do that. And Lil AD got with Big U, and she got with her homeboy, Little Bob, who now rest in peace. You know, I'm with Bear Claw, we standing together, and I get the phone call. So, you know, a lot of people say that I tried to take credit for it, or Big U tried to take credit or whatever, but Latanya Ward pushed that. She made it possible, and it ended a war, too, an 8-year-old war between two other Crip gangs. And, you know, even though the meeting with the 60s and the A-Tray was big, it was major, everybody was there, but a war actually stopped in the midst of that. So,
yeah, man. That was dope. That was dope. I remember that was a big thing.
Right.
You know, that was a big day for LA, and you know, seeing everybody come together like that was dope.
All right, so now can I brag on your show?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so what a lot of people don't know is the Florencias and East Coast came together.
Yeah.
You know, everybody know, and Lil Doc, man, they free Lil Doc. You know, I hope he get out.
Lil Doc, man.
But I want to say this though, that the same building that had the meeting with the Crips, right, when Nipsey got killed, we got thrown out of that building and we moved to the east side. And there were some people over there who didn't want me on the east side and said I couldn't come. So I had to find the right guys from Florencia, you know, so that we can get the blessings to be there and not be in war, because they were at war at the time. And, you know, this one guy who has the same name as me, our names are very similar, he got on the phone with the guys in prison and said, man, it's a youth center, this is what they doing. And the dude was like, man, that's cool. We want them there. We want our community to have that resource to benefit. And we built a relationship, me and him and one of my assistants, a young lady. Well, he's the one who called and said, well, man, let's just stop the war. This lady got killed, that lady got killed. Man, we're killing innocent people. Let's stop the war between the East Coast and the Florencia. So my part is just the beginning, getting that guy. And the hard part came with Doc. So I told my assistants, man, get with a guy who been doing intervention for years. Get with this guy who was one of the founders of the Cute 102s. I guess he's part of the 11-8 East Coast Crip. Get with him. You can get him done. And he never called back. You know, he said, yeah, I'm going to call y'all back. And he never did. But Doc stood up and went to the plate. He went to bat. So Doc did the hardest work. He did the hard part. He did, you know, the arguing, the fighting, the crying with his own people. To get it. And he didn't want to at first either. I want to say he said no for about 2 weeks, and then finally he did it. So I want to set that record straight, as well as also brag to say that that happened because I found that guy. So that guy who was in prison, I'm gonna give a shout out, Bobo, you know, and he said I could use his name, and he's that guy. And he made that happen. He said God put that on his heart where, you know, he wanted to end that beef. So I just want everybody to know, because a lot of people saying it didn't happen, this couldn't happen, whatever, whatever. There's a lot of people who were born in the 80s and 90s who are on the internet acting as if they have their ear to the street and they know certain things. But I want everybody to know that that was real, and it happened. It wasn't easy. Doc had to take the brunt for it, and now it propelled him to the top, you know, where shit, everybody's looking at him, and then they plucked him off the street. So I want to just give a shout out to Lil Doc. That was a major, major thing he did, you know, that led to other meetings as well. Inglewood 13 and NHPs and the Queen Streets, they also met at the building the very next year. So a lot of peace agreements. And I don't want to say peace agreements, but stop the shooting. Now, we may never ever get along, you know, but can we stop wanting to kill each other? And that's what happens, you know. We still get in our circles and say F them or whatever, but we're not writing it on the walls, we're not doing the internet banging, and we're not killing each other. So that's the blessing of what interventionists do. And I'm not the only one. There's several other people out there, you know, who do the same type of work that I do, that Melvin does, the Credible Messengers, the Ayatollah, Cynthia Nunn, you know, just a gang of other people who are a part of what we do as far as bringing peace to different communities.
Yeah, and also Taco Twin,
Yep.
AORP, Bernard Cooper.
Yes, indeed. Baby Spike. Right?
Baby Spike.
Right.
It's a lot of interventionists and guys that do community service where we're going to try to spotlight them and try to create dialogue amongst these warring factions and let these youngsters include them and try to give them a better opportunity. Like we say, we don't want them to be tax burdens. We want these guys to be taxpayers,
Right.
become productive citizens. We want people to be able to move around, be free, the elderly, the young. In my community, the kids haven't trick-or-treated in 8 or 9 years. Christmas is not the same. We have to get back to what we need to do to better our community and redefining it, and that's what we're just trying to do, give back, because we've all traveled the pavement and paid our dues on the street, because the #1 deterrent for crime is age. As you get older, the game slow down. But when you're still in the same environment, the way these conditions adversely still exist amongst every inhabitant there, it's very hard to come out there. When you're out in the suburbs, it's gun control. When you're in the inner city, it's gun laws to combat what go on in the communities that we say. So we just wanted to show people I did and get this man a chance, because I think his voice, as well as other ones that will be appearing on here, a voice where they voices could be heard also.
Man, that's what's up, man. I'm glad I can, you know, give you guys a voice and, you know, get some of the positive messages out there. It's a difficult time or rule to get positive messages out there, you know, with everything going on and everything. So I'm glad I can do that,
Yes, sir.
you know, for you guys. Definitely, man. And I appreciate you guys, man. You know, you guys' stories are dope,
Yeah.
you know.
Yes, sir.
Definitely, man.
Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, man.
One love, one life.
Yes,
Yes,
definitely,
sir.
man.